Going live. Verifying my live stream here in 1 second.
Got to get the tea in. I suddenly realized I'm probably using silly mug, but never mind. It's a good one. It's polite.
It's waiting for media not be loaded.
Okay, getting live in a few seconds, ladies and gentlemen. I'm making sure everything's working okay. Facebook feed is working good. Everything is looking fine on my end, so we'll just give it a go and kick it off. Thank you so much, everybody. This is Ian Khan. This is Wednesday, March the 25th, and I have with me an amazing panel of experts from the CPA industry, from the world of accounting. And these individuals and people, I'm so grateful to everybody for being here today. So we've got audiences watching us on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and LinkedIn Live. So we're live broadcasting from London, from the UK, from the United States, and from myself. I'm in Toronto today. Well, I've been here for a while because we're all grounded. But this panel, and the reason for this live stream is to really help understand where are we going as businesses, as firms, when it comes to the world of accounting. So I have with me Morison KSI, I have Memoria, who's the CEO. I have James Hickey, CEO of PKF, Terry Snider, CEO of Allinial Global. I have Steve from Prime Global, and I also have one more individual joining us, Sandra Saghir. She's here. I can see her.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
How are you? Fine, thank you. From Montreal.
She's an economist. She's from Montreal. She's a professor, and she can also help us understand where we're headed in terms of the economic forces that are shaping business. So I know everybody has potentially their views and opinions on what we should do, where we should go. How about we start with a round of initial thoughts, if you will, starting from, let's say, James, if you want to go first and just give us a 15 to 20 second overview of your current thoughts, given where you are and what we're going through.
Well, clearly I picked the short straw to go first, so everyone can now pick apart my opinion of what's going on in the world. Look, we're still in a complete state of so many different emotions. This is still, for some, still new. Countries on a daily basis go down into different lockdowns. This is really uncharted water, and I think that is part of the issue we find ourselves in, particularly in my case, a profession that is very much driven on the facts. And the problem we've got at the moment are there are very little facts, and it's a very brave person that puts their hand up and says that they know what tomorrow will look like, let alone the end of the week or a month's time. So we're in a complete vortex of different scenarios, and I think this is the number one challenge for not only someone in my position trying to lead a network, but more importantly our member firms, who these accounting firms are the real trusted advisors. They have always been the go-to for businesses and individuals seeking advice. So their role is ever more important. What is that relevant role in the world we find ourselves in today?
Absolutely. How about you, Terry? Terry, you're in New York?
Atlanta.
You're in Atlanta. Tell us a little bit about how things are going in the United States. Everybody's eyes are on the United States, but quick intro to what you're seeing right now.
You know, it's been a very broad cross-section. I have anticipated the worst, but just this weekend, I got a request for more staff from one of the members. And so what my vision is now is because you have different buckets of firms. So if you had 3 buckets of large firms, medium-sized firms, and small firms, they're all prepared differently, and they're all going to suffer or benefit based on where they've kind of placed themselves. And so we're seeing a kind of a variety right now. one of the unique things that I picked up the last 2 days is, since most firms operate with paperless today, working remotely has not been a challenge. So the challenge really lays with their clients and what their clients' needs and how their clients are reacting to it. So, I mean, I hope that makes a little bit of sense, is since it seems to me they're all prepared to work remotely, that's not been a problem. And I relate that to academia, where my granddaughter came home. The schools were thrust into working and doing schooling remotely. And as well as they visualized it, to execute it was much harder. So the accounting firms are used to executing in a paperless group, learning how to audit with a paperless group. Their clients are behaving the same way. And so they've moved forward, understanding that those clients are prepared to see them work remotely. And so far, some are anticipating about a 20% drop, but I've gotten no real numbers from them. They all seem to be functioning at this time.
That's very interesting that some clients are hiring, and I'm going to go into the people side of things in a few minutes, the impact of the COVID-19 on people, hiring, layoffs, and we're seeing so much here. Memoria, give us your thoughts. You're in London, and then we'll move on to Steve.
Again, as my colleagues have been saying, this is unprecedented. What I've been picking up from some of our members is that they've never been busier, because I think their clients are turning to them for increased amount of rests and all kinds of things, because they are working remotely. And some, I think in Europe maybe it's slightly different, because some of their firms are expecting them to be there and on hand. They are working night and day just to be able to respond, on top of being able to keep on top with the changing regulatory frameworks that we're constantly working in. And I know in the United States that's also the case. So I think there's huge demands being put on firms, huge demands being put on us as associations, as networks. I don't think we as a team have worked harder in a while, because again, we're all working remotely. But you know what? Our firms are clever. They're clever people. They're resilient. There will be new business models that are created out of this. I don't know exactly what those are going to look like. But, you know, I think once we come out of it, that'll be much, much clearer. But I think, you know, the prospects will be bright eventually, I think, because those people are clever and their clients rely on them.
Thank you. Steve, where are you? Are you in London?
I'm actually in Scotland, in Glasgow, but in the UK. But I would just echo some of the things that have been said by Memoria there in particular. Actually, I actually think what we're seeing at the moment, in many ways, is the profession at its best. And you know, I'm seeing the same thing, that our partners and our firms really working harder than they ever have done, and they're doing that in two ways. You know, to start with, looking after their own teams. And that was the focus at the beginning, really, to both look after well-being and then make sure that they could move to remote working. You know, complete practices, few hundred people, quite often going complete into a remote environment in an extremely short length of time. And that's been the focus. But then now what's happening is the firms are very focused on their clients and helping them take advantage of all the opportunities to get funding and support from government, to help with dealing with contracts, and really, in a way, we're going back to the basics of accounting, the core of accounting, because it's all about cash flow management and projections and looking at scenarios. And as James was saying, there's absolutely no, it's totally uncertain out there. But what's happening is the firms are using their skills and being trusted advisors, helping the clients stay focused and thinking as different survival strategies. And I think that's likely to evolve very soon and become more about taking opportunities.
Absolutely. So Sandra, we're not punishing you because you joined last, but you're an economist, and tell us about yourself. Tell us who you are, and then tell us what are we looking at. Unpack it a little bit more for us from an economic perspective and what you're seeing. And this is the wild west. Absolutely, we don't know the situations right now. But give us your analysis on what's going on.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm a senior economic consultant for the United Nations and the European Union, and an economic lecturer at McGill University here in Montreal. I deal with so many issues, mostly related to, current economic issues, problems, climate change, any sustainable development type of discussions, trade wars, etc. So anything that is in the flow of current topics. And indeed, what we've been hearing, and what is funny, just between parentheses, is that, as economists, we always used to say, when we study an economic profit, it's different from the accounting profit, because the accounting profit does not take into consideration the opportunity cost and so forth. So we always put when we start explaining economics, it's always like, accountants and businesses is one thing, economics analysis is it from another perspective. But what we can definitely say is that, the difference being the opportunity cost. We are all on the same page in this pandemic, which is, the most important cost of all this is health. And therefore, the key feature here, no one argues that spending on making sure to save lives is the primary focus of everyone, whether politicians, accountants, economists, entrepreneurs, firms, small, medium enterprises, large ones, everyone knows that a priority is here. Now, definitely, and what I really hear from what all of you have been saying is that the key argument is how fast can we now shift from remote type of teaching. And studies have shown so far studies are coming through on a daily basis, not even weekly basis, to adjusted situations. But there has been lots of arguments in terms of high skilled versus low skilled type of workers in adapting to these type of remote work. And definitely the higher skilled population have more facilities to combat or fight this type of structural organization, because we have the tools, even in the academic fields now. We have shifted towards online teaching, providing support to students, and it's been an ongoing process. But what about all those sectors that are less skilled, the distribution chain? Those are the sectors that we are really focusing on. We know that every type of enterprise now is trying to listen and find ways based on the federal and government support plans. What should be the priorities? What will be the effect of all these government support plan on the sustainability of those SMEs? Will they be able to sustain paying wages for their workers, or they have to exit? And therefore, everyone is monitoring really the situation on a daily basis on this matter, and it's a key problem now. And when the government comes in and say, we're going to provide now salaries, or checks provided. I mean, just today, the Canadian government, announced that a $2,000 check will be provided to families, to those that have lost their jobs, and the support to enterprises are being put in place so that the cash flow of income is going to be continuing, and therefore firms will at least be able to cover their employees, so that the longer term impact on vulnerability factors would be diminished, but also on returning back to a certain type of normality would be sustained, because we know that we will not be able to avoid a recession. That is for sure. But how deep, how fast will we be able to get back on track? That's another issue. And just to, sum it in two key factors, what studies have shown economically recently is that, the flattening curve that we've been hearing highly and on a daily basis, we need to flatten the curve, and therefore we should self-isolate, etc. But this is at the expense of the steepening of the economic curve, because the more flattening of the situation there is, the steeper will be the effect on recession, and the harder it will be, to have people afterwards, to boost back again the supply chain and the demand chain. But this is something that we will address in the longer term. That's why I started by saying, the health is now key. And but we're trying anyways, whatever the effect will be, we're trying to mitigate the effect of, on the economy, by also doing alternative modes of making sure that people's confidence, people's, behavior or trust in their government is not too weakened. because we know we're all taking precautionary motives. We don't want to spend now. We're, the precautionary motive of let's wait and see because we don't know how long it's going to take. It's putting a big toll on the demand. So we have a looping effect of demand and supply that are accumulating. But once again, that's a medium to long-term effect. We know it's going to be addressed. Now the key is the health issues, definitely, which are way more important.
Rightly said. Thank you so much, Sandra. One of the things that is coming out of this crisis, it's something that at least provides comfort to me personally, is that everybody is in the same boat. It's not that, hey, it's a specific business, it's a specific stream. No, everybody across the world is in the same boat, which gives us some confidence that, hey, we're all going to come out of it, or we're all working towards coming out of it. And I think for firms, whether they're small, medium, large, I think they all need to understand that this economic situation, health situation, business downturn is happening across the board. And I'd love to hear thoughts from the panel on what about the small and medium businesses, the one-person firm, the two-people firm. Are they going to face a lot more challenge in coming back, or the large ones? What are your insights when it comes to helping firms understand where they stand? Who'd like to take that? James.
Yeah, well, look, I think almost it's not a one size fits all. I think every business is going to see, and every individual is going to see this in very different ways. I think that when you see all the packages that governments are giving out, the key thing here is they are not giveaways. They are loans that need to be repaid at some stage. And so this is going to go on for a long time. Obviously, these loans are low, if no interest rates, but that is one of the issues that is going to take over. We're going to get through, and we will get through the CV-19. But it will be the aftershock of how do governments refill the banks? How do they get all the money back in again? How do they liquidate their assets on that? But I think that this is an opportunity from this small practitioner up to the big four accounting firm, the magic circle law firms, to really transform the way they work. And in any business state, I've been dealing with accounting firms for 20 years, and for most of that time, they've been talking about the same issues about how they manage talent, the relationship they have with their clients. This is now forcing them, and a lot of them have had to do it, whether they wanted to do it or not. This whole idea of remote working. It wasn't last year. I sat in so many events listening to people talking about the pros and cons of remote work. Well, they're having to do it now, and they'll learn that there are some good elements, there are some bad elements. Anyone can do this. The issue that we're finding is how do teams really work, and I think that becomes quite clunky in terms of just the relationships, and you can get the job done, but how do you do that team element of it? But I think that one does have to look at the world we sit in now with a half-full mentality. It is hard. No one knows, as I've already said, what tomorrow looks like, but we can make sure that everybody comes out of this in a better way. And whether that's on a social, economic, health way, let's use this, and we've got to start spinning it in that way. And look, we're seeing it. One of the joys and the frustrations of social media, and here we are on it now, is that you do the bad and worst in humanity. And I'm hoping this is the good side on this one, the 6 of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
The difficulty is that the bad news sells, and so you find the media following small groups of people that are taking the society down. But there are so many good stories about how people are really supporting their communities, and I think that is it. Yes, it's a supporting business, but we've got to look at this as supporting communities and supporting individuals. And the only way we're going to get through this is by all working together, from the basics of making sure that we're all isolated, so we help with the spread of reduce the spread of the virus, and then after that, supporting the weak, the poor, the lonely, and taking them on. And that's not just individuals, that's businesses as well, and just supporting them.
And indeed, to add on that, I would really, if I may, Ian, to complement on this, even the dynamics of global international cooperation are going to be different following this pandemic, because there are going to be international support, the dynamics of who works with whom, how outsourcing is going to operate, the supply chains are going to be changing based on, certain political health affinities, health supports. So I think that the whole dynamic of the world, the way we knew it initially and the way it's going to be, the global international coordination is going to be strengthened based on this pandemic. We used to talk about, on so many different topics, we have a problem of global coordination, certain companies, take advantage of others in certain, emerging versus developed, etc. Now, probably this is going to be a very changing point in terms of many, international relations. And for firms, small firms, support, yes, it starts with the support system of these SMEs, and they will create some coordination schemes where those that have been felt or feeling the same effect together might coordinate to support each other. So the SMEs might, come together and say, there's going to be sharing of employees, sharing of knowledge, spillovers. It's going to change the dynamics of how different enterprises at different levels are going to cooperate in the future.
Ian, can I ask Sandra a question? Do you feel that this could be a leveler? So we were that SMEs maybe having a more prominent role in the future, because again, if this is changing this dynamic between big and small, do you think we could flatten these things out? I mean, it'll be very interesting to see how the big six respond, for example, compared to maybe some of our smaller and medium-sized firms where they'll be able to step in and step up. I mean, comparisons will be really interested in your views.
Yeah, honestly, I think that it will depend first on how the government tackles those small entrepreneurs of one to two individuals. If, based on what is being said in the developed world to start with, if the governments really support the cash flow by, let's say, exempting them or postponing the rents that they have to pay because they can't afford to pay the rents now. So, as James was saying, it's going to be delayed. These expenses in terms of rents, mortgages, etc. If money is really provided for these SMEs of one or two entrepreneurs, small size, even a couple of 10 and so forth, money is provided to them in a way where they could still cover their cash flows, just pay their employees and make sure that they don't go and dig into their savings for a long period of time. Because many, when you hear and you ask them questions, many would tell us, I can sustain it based on my savings for a month or two. More than that, I would have to exit. So this obviously needs the support of the public sector. And the government really makes sure that these individuals do not dig into their savings to sustain these 2, 3, 4 months, whatever period of the pandemic. If yes, then at least their savings would not have been, used up in this process. Now, following this matter, indeed, they will have to start operating again. Start operating once again will allow them to have, to encounter fixed costs all over again. They're going to have to pay again all these inputs. And if I'm talking only about, maybe small restaurants, small shops, etc., depending on whether their products are perishable or not, there are many factors that enter at stake. But if they feel that at least they were not left behind, that their employees would not have to go and find another type of job because, they were laid off, the teamwork, as you were pointing it out, is still there. So there's no, crash in the team effort. The coordination, the core unit of the enterprise is still there. It would be easier for them to ensure that, following this pandemic, things will work out and will start to boost again. But if there is a dismantling because some workers have been laid off, these companies have to start all over again in finding employees, finding suitable individuals, search for it. That's going to put a way longer, larger gap on the rapidity or the speed to be back on track. And these are the weakest ones. as opposed, to the larger size enterprises that already have such a big amount of, mobility among employees that could be, put in certain other sectors. You look at the banking sector and you contact your employee, some of the employees, they tell you they have been put in another branch. They have been, transferred to another unit. This is faster. There is no mobility. But those small SMEs of one or a couple of less than 10 workers might have less mobility.
Let's add a different component here. So
Go ahead.
I look at what our role, and so what's our role with our members and their clients, and so certainly I agree with what's been said about it's an opportunity for usually any kind of downturn. Go back to 7, 8, 9 when there was an economic downturn. Accountants realized that trusted advisor role was most important. Okay, what our role is and what as running our organizations is, now it's time for those smaller firms to learn the coordination of working with the bigger firms who have the kinds of resources today that clients will need from them. And so our role and my role has been, by team, has been to coordinate those resources so that small firms can realize that attest services and the traditional tax return services and things may be slowing down. So now they can take these advanced services and advanced thinking to their clients. And so we're busy trying to coordinate, create groups of talking to each other so that the accounting firms, which by and large are in different clusters and different groups, can work together and provide resources together and maybe learn a new path together to benefit. So sometimes in these kind of times, it's a great time to provide leadership, coordination, and development so that clients of our members can benefit and that the members of our groups can also now cross-link and provide and work with each other. And we've been actively busy doing that in our office and making sure that those services, which larger firms have provided for years now and have really tuned up, now can be provided to the firms that are somewhat smaller. And sometimes size isn't the only factor in this. It's just how they want to work and work with their clients. And so we've been making it a client-focused, a member-driven position so that everybody can benefit and win. And we focus every day on what's the value that we can provide to our members who can provide to their clients and the coordination. So I think that's a real role we all can play in this.
Thank you, Terry. That makes perfect sense. One of the things that I really believe, and this is what I'm seeing in industry, and Steve, I've got a question for you after I'm done saying what I wanted to say, is that my question is, as accounting industry leaders, and you work with firms every single day, this is your world, accounting firms of all sizes. Do you think accounting firms, accountants, people who founded these firms 20, 30, 50 years ago, or the young generation accountants, do you think they need to change the way they are going to approach the market? Do you think they need to inject some new energy into creating more value for the client? Because now we have to put ourselves in the shoes of their clients. They'll have to think about what their clients are going through. Many of them will be out of business. Many of them have laid off people. This is clients of accountants. Many of them are on government incentives. How do you feel that firms need to change what they do in terms of a value offering and talk about that with their clients?
Perhaps.
Yeah, and this is. So, shall I come in there, Ian? Yeah, is that okay? Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, you can hear me. This is something that's you can see some changes coming through already. And in a way, what's happening, actually, the people you're talking about who founded these firms many years ago, their core skills are coming out more than ever before, because what's happening is the partners, the managing partners, are almost stepping back to their clients and their firms more than ever, with direct contact at the moment and reaching out to them and trying to recognize the challenges they're having and giving them direct advice. And I think that's something that is likely to continue even more when this finishes. And when we get back to, I suppose, more of a more normal market position, the other thing that I can see some of the partners I'm talking to at the moment, they're beginning to change their mindset about how they operate their practice. Now, I think James was saying this, you know, some of these trends have been going on for some time and we've talked about them for the last 10 years, but actually what's happening is this is speeding up more than ever before. So, you know, I'm talking to partners who are saying, well, actually, you know what, maybe I don't actually need that office anymore. You know, we've got firms who've got 50 offices in some countries, and they're saying, well, actually, yeah, do I need all of that? Because it's actually a hindrance because I can't be as flexible now, and it becomes a cost issue. Anyone who's not moved fully onto a cloud-based offerings now is going to deal with that very, very quickly going back, because again, that gives them flexibility, it gives them a stronger infrastructure. So I think what you'll see is the profession, the core skills of the profession are needed more than ever before. And people have those skills, but the way they deliver, they'll be a lot more nimble, they're a lot more agile, and it will be about those personal relationships and the trust. Now, that like I say, is at the heart of how these practices were built in the first place. So what can happen is this generation who created that can now help, I think, the next generation come through, build some of those skills around interpersonal skills, empathy, understanding the client's business, caring about the client's business more than anything else. And I think that could help the next generation of the profession come through very strongly. So there are positives coming from this. I know it's a terrible situation, but there are lots of positives as well that will come through and benefit us all for the longer term.
Yeah.
Certainly my response on this is they have to change. And any accounting firm that in recent time I've been saying to, if you think like an accounting firm planning your tomorrow, you won't have a tomorrow. They have to transform. And I think actually, I think sometimes, and you know, I totally agree with a lot of what Terry was saying, but I think there's almost a sweeping assumption that the big firms get it right. And it is not that. Actually, the market has changed, and you have got small, medium-sized firms that are very boutique focused, but have a completely different go-to-market strategy now. And actually the big firms can learn a lot off them, because they're the ones using technology to the absolute full. They're the ones working remotely. They're the ones actually delivering, and maybe even, and I would suggest actually learning from other professions. If you look at financial services, that is years ahead of accounting when it comes to the use of AI and the algorithms, and you know, trading floors look totally different than they did a few years ago, 10 years ago. And that's to say the accounting profession will follow, and it will happen. It will follow those lines. So they really do need to reinvent themselves. They really do need to have a very different outlook on how they go to market. And one of the challenges within the accounting profession is it's very good at benchmarking of itself. You know, there are all these benchmarking studies, and they compare one firm to the other. And it's amazing how many times you sit in a conference and the word client is actually mentioned. I was at a 3-day conference last year, and the word client was mentioned 5 times. And you know, that just simply isn't enough. And it's the profession, and I'm speaking generally, but the profession is still bad at going, look, this is what we prescribe to you, the client, rather than saying, what do you want? What do we need to deliver to you to add value? And I think that is the massive opportunity. And look, we saw this after the financial crash, that you know, a lot of businesses had lived on the groundswell of economic growth. You could make bad decisions and you'd still grow. And now we find ourselves in this current situation where this is hitting everybody. And so the businesses that learned from 07, 08 are in a far better place today, because they have cash reserves, they have infrastructure, they have technology, they've adopted new working practices. It's amazing still, and you know, this is not PKF, this is just looking at the market where suddenly people are, you know, if you look at top searches, it is about business continuity, risk management. You shouldn't be searching about that today. That's something that should happen months, years ago. Yep. So again, I think that this is going to be a leveler, but again, we just all need to learn by this. And I think, again, it's so important that we also need to know that we're in the very early days, and it's so important not to jump. You know, we clearly got to be in a position where we protect business. More importantly, when I say protect business, that's protecting our people and the welfare of our people. And we've got to look at that. And that is the driving force, because again, the world of social media, that is going to have an instrumental role in terms of how business looks like at the end of this whole process, in terms of what they do with talent, what they do with the well-being, what they do with their clients, and how they support their clients. And if you get it wrong, you can't hide it under the doormat anymore. It will be out there. So you have to be very methodical and very strategic about what are we trying to do today, and what does that look, how is that going to influence our business throughout this process, but more importantly in 2021, 2022, and for years to come.
Thank you, James. We're almost halfway around the mark, and we don't have a lot of time in this panel. It's just a very short 1-hour panel. But thank you again for being part of this lively discussion. Memoria, you've done a lot of work in not just the accounting industry. You've done a lot of work in other industries. You've seen membership models, you've seen actuaries, and you've seen a lot other things. And we were talking about the sustainability in other industries. What do you see as parallels between the challenges that accounting industry is facing today and, you know, some other industries? How would we compare, like, where everybody is right now and what we should be doing? What are your thoughts on it? I'd love to hear those.
So unlike some of my esteemed colleagues, I have just entered the accountancy profession, if you call it that, over the last 6 months. So previously I've worked with lots of different kinds of professional bodies. I think what I find really interesting about working with specific experts, if you would call that a parallel, is the deep passion that they hold for their particular profession. So I think that carries them on. I think what I'm challenged by in this particular industry goes back to what both James and Steve were saying, is that they're conservative by nature. And the business models of 30 years ago are not necessarily going to sustain them for the business models in the future. And that's me coming in as a novice really into this industry. And it's quite apparent to me that if you're not embracing, as you say, technology or new technology or analytics or adding value and asking the client what they want and what they need, you won't survive because other people are going to do it. I think in terms of parallels, I think, you know, certain professions are more risk averse than others. Some manage risk very, very closely, as my friend of the actuaries would do that too. But I think it's being able to take risks and saying, no, we need to try this. We need to look at sustainability in a different kind of way. We need to look at different ways that we advise our clients that's going to add value to them and give them new opportunities. So we're actually leading them and not responding to them as, you know, just being reactive, being proactive instead of reactive. Yeah. So I don't know that.
Just very quickly, I think I totally agree with those points, but I also think that where we are today is that's almost a luxury. You know, at the moment we're far. I totally agree, and I think, you know, and I was just looking at some of the live comments, and I'm assuming it's the Mike Platt I know from America is talking, and I think I totally agree with him. I think if we look again purely at probably professional services, I think they're still in a honeymoon period because they're still in the peak season. They're still in, this is business they've already won. The sort of the knock-on effect of their clients beginning to struggle with their cash flow, and it's they're delivering services, but they've also got to collect the fees from those services. And what I think that, you know, the effect of what's happening at grassroots is not going to come into professional services. There's going to be a lag, whether that's a week, 2 weeks, the end of the season. And I think that's where you're suddenly going to end up in a position where, you know, people are going to have to really sit down and look at what that business looks like, because that's when the cash flow is going to change.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, just to add as well. Sorry, Ian, I was just going to add as well, just to building a little bit on these points, is one of the challenges as well that the partners in the firms are having to demonstrate more than ever before is leadership capability. You know, so they're having to go to areas they're perhaps more familiar, as in going to talk to their clients, but showing leadership in their own firms in terms of how they give their staff confidence, how they deal with people from different generations through this, how you deal with remote working without any training really around those areas and doing it in a very short length of time. You know, that is very demanding, and you think of some fantastic inspirational stories out there, but it's a very, you know, that I think will change how partners view their role probably for the longer term, I think.
Sandra, you're on the mute. 1 second.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, go ahead.
to add on this, in that, indeed, I totally agree with everything that is being said. And I think that in addition to all this, as accountants and audits and all these, key factor components in any type of enterprises, well-being and cash flow assessments, because you are key features in any business. Otherwise, people will not be able to stand where to determine where they stand financially speaking. But I think now your role probably will also be changing towards, incorporating more exogenous factors and assessing shock events based on this experience in a shorter, medium, and long-term perspective. You were already, anyways, addressing returns on investments of certain companies, certain clients, obviously depending on what type of businesses you are to deal with on a daily basis, and I assume many different types of enterprises. But it is true that now I think the dynamics of how do we address the short-term, medium-term, long-term cash flow of or viability of enterprises is going to incorporate a shock effect of, what would happen if at some point in time companies become more vulnerable because of external shocks, which was usually more inside focused, internal focused, way more, can I afford to pay direct costs, etc. And obviously being affected by, the international trade or international restrictions or political factors. Now I think there is going to be an added factor besides the normal economic political factor, which is the shock factor, uncertainty. And this risk factor, this risk term, I think is going to gain way more importance in the future 10 years than it used to be. It already started, as James and Steve and pointed it out, after the 2007, 2008, where we saw lots of changes. But if every 10 years someone is expected to have some form of shock, exogenous factor, now I think it's going to be way more on a recurrent basis. People are going to incorporate it differently.
I want to take this to Terry. And Terry, you've spent a lot of years in the industry, and because you're in the United States right now, so I want to make it relevant to the entire continent. America is a super big market for the industry. AICPA is one of the largest bodies when it comes to accounting. Yes, they've started a lot of different initiatives. They're coming up in June, which I'm very skeptical about whether it'll happen or not at this stage. But what are your thoughts on some of the, let's say, some of the action items that firms should start looking at? We heard education. We heard, partners will have to redefine what they do, and they will have to rethink how to address the market. What are some of the, maybe one or two key areas that you would suggest that firms start looking into right now, rather than wait until things become okay, in context of the North American market, but also globally, because you obviously are global?
Well, that's a good question. Ian, my thoughts have been that every once in a while at this kind of an event causes people to rethink and kind of have to reinvent themselves. And sometimes you have to be shaken really hard to get people to do it. I think they've all felt that. So what I see is firms are going to start realizing that these new skills they need to have developed have become real. And I think you're going to see more firms asking their partners, asking their members to get out in front of their clients when this is over and say, how can we really serve you? What do you really need from an accounting firm? And I think that's the fallback on being a trusted advisor. I think maybe the reality will come out of this, how valuable accountants are. They don't run to their attorneys as fast. They don't run to their insurance people or their counsel. They run to their accountants who have a very broad base of experience. And I think this is an opportunity now to say, Mr. Client, what's the best I can do for you? What do you need from an accounting firm today? And I do think they're going to fall back and find out that some of these other services that they've been offering, from the valuation of firms to litigation support to logistics support and all these other things you've been hearing about, they're going to have to invest more deeply into providing those to their client and their client mix, and maybe even create new clients out of it. But a bad time can be a refreshing time when there are real leaders out there looking at their firm saying it's now time to advance our model into an early stage. And I'm seeing firms beginning to ask those questions about what more can we do, what more can we provide to our clients. And we've been providing forums for people to have those conversations, to get prepared. And there's always been a push as a practitioner to get all your partners and your leaders of your firms out from behind their desk and into their client mix to find out answers to those questions. And I think this event may, in fact, waken firms to say that's a real exercise for us now to start asking, what can we do to help you, and what can we do, Mr. Client, to help you grow and help you benefit from the future?
And I'll give you a real life example, Terry. A real life example is that me as a business, the first thing that I had to do when all of this has been coming down is to not call the government, not call our prime minister, but to call my accountant and to ask my accountant, so what does this mean for me? The announcement that just happened today morning at 11, what does this mean for me? And if my accountant says to me, I really don't know, and that's a breakdown in my trust with my accounting firm. And I think
exactly
it's right that accounting firms, in my opinion, and we're getting into the last segment of this session, so we're kind of maybe more summarizing what the action points are. If you ask me, the first thing that every accounting firm needs to do right now is start a series or an initiative of COVID-19 communication. This is where their clients know what they're thinking, what their strategy is, what they plan to do, and translate what Mr. Trump is saying, what Mr. Boris is saying, what Trudeau is saying, and to translate that into points that clients can understand, and to amplify on the newsletters that they send out to their clients, on the communication that they're sending out to clients. I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Memoria, you're shaking your head. James, I know you want to say something. Memoria, go for it.
Now there's a chance.
Sorry, we've seen some really wonderful examples from some of our members going out to their clients and supporting their clients. And what we said to them is, look, can we share this with the broader membership? So this was one question I wanted to ask my colleagues, is what you're doing to support your members at a certain level. But answering this, what we're doing is we're collating all this information and actually making it available through us. So all members, no matter what size, no matter what access they have to this kind of information, they've got some tools to hand. So some of the larger firms that have bigger teams that can bring a lot of these really interesting pieces together, we can make those available to everybody else. So we're going to make that an open resource on our website so everybody can have access. And some people have had some, as I said, fantastic examples of what they've been doing in terms of communicating with their clients.
Go ahead. Please unmute yourselves and then.
Steve, this also, Ian, is a very good time for people to focus on their staff's new skill development. There are groups out there that can provide, new consultative skills that people can use. So there's lots of opportunity in all this to refocus and to gain from that. And we're seeing a lot of that. Yesterday, our marketing coordinator led a discussion for one of our members. They had they did it in the construction industry. They had 80 participants on their call. Wow. So it shows you that there's opportunity. Yeah. People are listening. It goes back to what you said. It's time for the accountants to take their lead and to invest heavily in their clients and their clients' needs. And most of all, listen to what they're saying and maybe come back and re-prescribe your services to benefit from that.
Steve, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just to build on what you were saying, Ian, in a way, it is all hands to the pump now, and it is all about crisis management and sustainability. But I do think the accountants, and this is thinking generally about the profession, we have to take some space as well to be quite strategic about the steps we're going through now. So there's something about, at the moment, it's a great opportunity, because what's happening is the firms are going in and they're helping business put in place, if you like, the core foundations, which will allow them to be more strategic and allow them to think about new opportunities. So, what some firms have been saying to me is, okay, look, they were almost quite surprised because they found out that a lot of their clients aren't doing proper cash flow management. They don't have the right information to make day-to-day decisions. So they've not been resilient enough as organizations to actually be able to grow and develop and be more strategic. Now, what's happening now is the firms are helping them build the foundations. But what should be in all of our firms' minds is, okay, that's good, but when the foundations are in place, let's go back and have that conversation about where do we go from here and where are some of the opportunities that we can take. Now, I know that's hard to do at this point because that is not what anyone wants to hear, but we should be thinking about the right time to have that. Now we've got that trust, because ultimately economic growth now is all down to confidence levels. So once we do start to come out of this, the only way we're going to see the economy growing is both consumers feel confident to go and spend money and travel again and do all the things they used to do, and business is going to have to be confident enough to put some investment in. The people who can drive that confidence are the professional accounting firms and the professions. So absolutely, we should all be looking at that, thinking of that opportunity now.
Thank you, Steve. James, let me ask you this question that Michael Platt has asked, that profession has been talking about making bigger investments in technologies. Do you think this will accelerate or slow down this investment? What are your thoughts?
I think it probably already has sped up because they've had to do it. They were probably sitting there, and again, the accounting profession is brilliant at talking about change, but all too often pretty poor at implementing change, for whatever reason that might be. I think, yeah, investment has to happen. It will happen. I think, again, one of the issues you've got, and you see this, we talked about the AICPA Engage conference, and my understanding is that is postponed already. But, when you go to that conference, pretty much three-quarters of it is just filled with fintech companies. And the problem is how do you navigate through that? How do you make sure you've got the right technology that's adding value, that's talking, that manages your data? But I think, going back to your earlier question, what should accounting firms, professional service firms be doing now? Yes, I agree with what everyone said, but that's not for now in most markets. The now is you've got to get on the phone, you've got to be out visiting, sorry, not visiting, she can't because of the lockdown. You've got to be listening to what are their pains. You've got to be making sure that your business is flexible, moving people out of teams that their service requirements have just fallen off the precipice, where the practice areas there just is no money, there's no need for them. See if you can pull those people into other areas of the business. If not, then you've got to look at it. We've already said it, cash is king at the moment. You've got to make sure that your firm as an accounting firm has the resources to get through this, because if you haven't, you're going to be wasting your client's time. You're not going to be there to support them. So it's understanding the pain that they're going through, making sure that the very basics of your practice are established to get through this. And I'm here, Terry mentioned it earlier on, I think we are going to see an influx of talent into the market, because the big firms are going to have to get rid of talent. That's just the sad reality of this market. We saw it in the financial crisis, particularly out of some of the big, larger law firms. And I think accounting firms in the middle market, small market, need to be really careful, because they'll see this talent and go, we need it. But do you? And I think that's the opportunity, once things have quietened down, is to take that step back and look at, okay, we've learned something here, that this really worked when we worked remotely, this didn't. Is there a way in which we can improve this? And I think at the heart of all of this is trust. Because now what's having to happen is that you don't have people all sat around a desk and you can see that they're the last one out of the office and all of this stuff. You're having to trust that people can work in their home environment. And one of the issues that you are going to face is, how's that going to impact business development? So, and I think there have been already quite a few sort of comments from people on the call in terms of saying, depending on where these firms are in the world, they're either dealing with tax season, audit, or whatever. They're coming to the end, potentially, of peak period. And then it's that drop off of what happens next. And a lot of the advisory side that everyone has been pushing to, a lot of businesses will say that's nice to have, but that's not essential. So what is absolutely essential to the client? And you can only find that out by having real valuable conversations where two ears are used, not one.
Ian, one of the things I used to ask my clients in like these kind of stages is, say, what hurts today? What hurts the most? And that's a great starting point we tell our members to start asking that question. You're going to find out what clients really need and what really clients can provide. and then use the vehicles that we have available to satisfy those needs. Not thinking you have, as a firm, you have to have all the answers, but if you can invest in systems like we've got, you can find the answers among the membership. I'm very happy to help. So I think it's a real opportunity now for everybody to work together and to show, and the profession has a real opportunity to shine right now, I think. So this is the time that really accountants can really benefit and really show what their value is.
Yeah, Terry, and I would agree with that. And I think that's where, the problem we find ourselves in is there's just so much information. What do you trust? What do you believe? What actually really adds value to your business? So any professional for service firm should be the facilitator of knowledge, and they should be cherry picking the good stuff. And likewise, when they're part of a network, they can share that knowledge, but also don't reinvent the wheel. There are experts out there already writing this stuff. Don't spend time writing, just pull it in. Even if it's one of your competitors, I would still use it. Just get it out there. And concentrate more on actually having those valuable conversations.
I see this as our real role now. I think we can really bring our firms together to coordinate, to communicate, and to talk about what problems, what solutions they may have for them. We've been doing that on the last several days and last several weeks, asking our members, what do you need? What can we do for you? And getting them together in conference calls to talk and share seems to be the biggest asset we can bring, because they're all anxious to show their value. And I think it's time for accountants to really shine right now.
And technology is very accessible. We're using something called Stream right now to stream this. You have Zoom. You have so much different technology available to reach out to people and to communicate. Some of the things that I would like to recommend to networks in general and associations in general, because you're trying to bring people together, is look at newer collaborative solutions. For example, Slack, and you can enable channels on Slack and get people to maybe try out a new mode of communication. So that's definitely something you can see. Try a weekly live stream. If I was a member, I would love to hear from all of you every week, generally speaking. So please be on members' faces, 10x amplify your outreach, and I'm sure you all are doing that. And for accounting firms, I really recommend them to amplify their outreach to their clients and not be shy about hurting their feelings. Trust me, every client, every company out there wants to be given comfort, wants to be given the right advice. And I think accounting firms are in the right place to do this and to create that value that they stand for, and to really find their place in this whole new world that we're looking at. Many accounting firms are looking into new partnership models and how technology augments things and so on. Great time to have those discussions, because business is not 100% at a 100% capacity right now. Tax seasons have been deferred, and all of that that has happened. I'm going to take final thoughts from everybody. Let's start with Memoria. Memoria, final thoughts, 30 seconds on what do you think tomorrow looks like, and one thing that you suggest everybody to do right away. Everybody who's watching.
Okay, so as I said, I'll go back to my beginning statement. We have very, very clever members, and they will be resilient. They might not be doing exactly the same thing they were doing 3 weeks ago in 3 months' time. But, they will survive, and we're here to support them to do that. One thing that we've been doing is reaching out to every single firm individually. We're not in a blast. We've been doing that as well, but really just doing more of that human support, the one-to-one support, and getting feedback from them. A little bit about what you were saying is really understanding what they need from us as associations and networks, and how we can support them through this crisis.
Thank you. James, please go ahead.
Perfect. Look, I think we're all, depending on which media you're looking at, where you are in the world, it's a pretty dire world we find ourselves in. But the reality is we will get through this. And my one piece of advice is every day, pick up the phone and talk to someone different, and make sure they're safe, make sure they're well, and make sure that, and ask if there is anything you can do to help them, whether they're a client, whether they're a friend, whether they're a past colleague or whatever. And if we all do that, then we'll get through it.
Thank you, James. Sandra.
Yes. So I think honestly, in general, accountants are going to be key actors in how the economy and all the sustainability of different firms and clients will be seen. They are going to be the catalysts of the eventually movement towards sustainability in the future. They have two different tasks at stake. One is internal and one is external. The external task will be definitely to reassure their clients first, to show them that, as was already stated, by Terry and many of you, that reassurance is key, because during these periods, they need to feel that they have someone to rely on, and their finances, their sustainability, their breaking even or not, whether they will remain in the market or not, will depend on your foreseeing, if you want, or future forecasting of how things will evolve. So being there.
Sandra, what's your one piece of advice you would give our viewers?
I would
just want taking action right away.
In terms of in the industry of accountant, rely on, definitely make sure that you support your clients, as was stated. In addition to that, work internally in developing the key factors to ensure, as was stated, that skills are in place, so that once you have built that trust, as was stated, once the economy afterwards starts moving again, people will know that during hardships, you were there standing by them. And this is going to very much multiply the amplifying effect of how important those accountants are in everyone's, sustainability.
Thank you. Terry, how about yourself? Final words of advice.
My microphone.
1 second, Terry. Yeah, go for it. I can hear you now.
I would tell people to be positive, be a leader, look to the future. This is the long-term run. At the end is don't focus on the short run and what's going on right now, but look at the long term and the long-term value you can provide.
Thank you, Terry. Steve, go for it.
Yeah, I would say embrace where we are now, because it is where we are. Be entrepreneurial, be innovative, and ask questions. Both ask questions and share your problems internally and externally. And I've seen that happening internally, where we've had teams agree to wage reductions to go on to flexible working because they understand the problem and they collectively own it. So share and talk to each other, and be prepared to try some new things.
Thank you so much. So Memoria, amplify what you're doing. James says, pick up the phone. Sandra is saying, reassure your clients. Terry says, be positive, and it's a long-term thing. And Steve, you're talking about collaboration, be collaborative. Again, I agree with all of you. Thank you so much for being part of this panel and making time from your schedule. Really appreciate it. And let's hope we are stronger, the industry is stronger, and we all are collectively learning to make the world a better place. Be safe wherever you are, and take care of your people, your teams. I know a lot of you are struggling with different things, and the virus is not helping at all. But thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. Memoria, James, Sandra, Terry, and Steve, thank you so much. Big respect, and you guys take care.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.